Let me read to you a passage from the 10th chapter of St. Mark's Gospel, verses 46 to 52. It's the Gospel for Thursday of the 8th week in Ordinary Time. St. Mark writes, "Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Timaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, 'Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me.' Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, 'Son of David, have mercy on me.' Jesus stopped and said, 'Call him.' So they called to the blind man, 'Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you.' Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. 'What do you want me to do for you?' Jesus asked him. The blind man said, 'Rabbi, I want to see.' 'Go,' said Jesus, 'your faith has healed you.' Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. That's from Mark chapter 10, verse 46 to 52. We're led to think of the divine mercy. What do I mean? Well, let's take an instance. She was born in Japan in 1930, prematurely, and as a result, she struggled with a weak constitution for most of her childhood. Her name was Agnes Katsuko Sasagawa. Raised in a Buddhist family, at age 19, she was struck by a paralysis of the central nervous system as a result of a mistake that had been made during an appendectomy. For 16 years, she was physically fairly immobile. Then, in a clinic in Miyako, Japan, she became friends with a nurse who was a fervent Catholic. Under the care of this nurse, Agnes's health improved, and it was here that she took her first steps in the Catholic faith. Her love of God grew so much that Agnes desired to enter a religious community. Agnes has declared that sometime after her conversion, her guardian angel appeared to her and taught her the Fatima Decade Prayer, and told her to insert this into the rosaries that she prayed. Agnes then joined the Sisters of Junsin in Nagasaki. 4 months later, however, she had a sudden relapse of health and needed to be taken back to the clinic in Miyako. The Sisters of Junsin prayed for her recovery and sent some Lourdes water for her to drink. Immediately upon sipping the holy water, Agnes regained consciousness. Her paralyzed limbs also gained mobility. While she wished to return to the sisters in Nagasaki, the pastor of Kakada asked her and persuaded her to care for a newly constructed church in Miyako. Later, she heard about the Institute of the Handmaids of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in the Holy Eucharist. Upon the invitation of Bishop Ito, founder of the Institute, Agnes joined the Handmaids of the Eucharist. She retained the care of the church in Miyako and taught catechism as well. However, on Friday, March the 16th, 1973, she realized that she had gradually become deaf. She had consecrated herself to God and above all desired to live only in His service. If permitted, she wished to offer herself in a life of prayer and penance in the mother house of the Handmaids of the Eucharist. And so it was. By May the 12th, 1973, all doors had opened for her to begin her new life, a life in total silence, prayer, and dedication, and she entered the convent at Yatawadi, better known as Akita. During the months that followed, Agnes began to experience the stigmata. Various other supernatural occurrences followed, including the purported messages and tears from the wooden statue of Our Lady of All Nations. The matter of these interventions of Our Lady was approved by the Bishop of the Diocese, Bishop Ito of Niigata, in a pastoral letter of April 1984. He stated that after the inquiries conducted up to the present day, I authorize that all of the diocese entrusted to me venerate the Holy Mother of Akita, Our Lady of Akita. Now, the purpose of my mentioning this is not to recommend the veneration of Our Lady of Akita. That may be left to the test of time and to the judgment of the Church. Inevitably, there will be some controversy about that. The purpose here is to point to the case of a most unlikely person, born outside the Christian pale, and with the worst luck in terms of physical health. She was drawn gradually into the knowledge of Jesus Christ and an intimacy with him, accompanied by dramatic personal healings of her sorry condition. So let us simply think of the story of this woman as an illustration of the divine mercy touching human need and raising an obscure person from the prospect of temporal misery to a share in the divine life. Agnes passed from Buddhism and impossible ill health to a vibrant faith in Jesus Christ. She could not have expected any such outcome, nor could have anyone associated with her. It was the divine choice, present in countless other instances and in various forms in others. All of this brings us to our gospel that I read earlier from Mark chapter 10, verse 46 to 52, which begins with the scene of the pathetic blind man, the son of Timaeus, sitting by the road at the departure from Jericho. Doubtless it was a good spot to beg from, having immediate access to all who would be leaving the city for Jerusalem. We read that then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. Bartimaeus was a nobody, with little prospect for anything in life, except to eke out an existence with few comforts and little consolation. He may have been pitied, but probably not helped much. We most suppose that it would also have been difficult for him to grow significantly in his religious life, for he had few supports. But the divine touch was certainly present in his life, as we see from what followed his dramatic healing. His life had been miserable, and the one thing he wanted to be liberated from was his blindness, so that so incapacitated him. The divine mercy, without warning, entered his life in the person of Jesus of Nazareth, in whom is present the fullness of the Godhead bodily. Rabbi, I want to see. Go, said Jesus, your faith has healed you. What happened then was much more significant than his healing, just as the life of faith was much more significant than her healings in the life of Agnes. We read of Bartimaeus that immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. His name is given, suggesting that he was known in the infant church and that his following of Jesus along the road was the beginning of an unshaken discipleship for the rest of his life. Jesus Christ became the treasure of his life, the light that had dispelled the darkness and which continued to dispel the darkness. Bartimaeus lived in the light from then on. This was the greatest act of divine mercy in his life, and it is a lesson for every other so-called nobody.